Brothers and sisters, Brother John, watchman for that great day. I am going to let you see this mic from around the world, Mega Quake. It might be in two parts, so enjoy. God bless you, and I'll get you set up here to watch.
Are you serious? Are you serious, folks? Welcome to another great presentation here on Mega Quake 2020. I am so glad that you have purchased a ticket for this great conference and that you are now going to be in, literally, I'm sure, by now you've experienced some of the tremendous information that these speakers are bringing forward. Tonight and during this program right here, you're getting ready to experience some great information from Mike from around the world. We are so honored that he was willing to come on and be a part of this great conference. And so we're going to learn about his information he's got to share on this Mega Quake 2020 conference, how it's affecting our earth and the changes that we're about to encounter. Mike, it's great to have you with us tonight.
Good to be here, Pastor Paul. Good to be here.
So, Mike, we've talked many times, and the audience love to hear what you've got to say. And so tonight, you're uncensored, you're unbridled, unafraid, you're ready to roll. So tell us, we know since Cincinnati, we've talked a lot about the incoming Planet X, Nibiru, Planet number 9, the binary system, and the effects on our planet, and the biblical, prophetic effects on our planet. So many things that are happening, but the general public, we really don't know what all is happening to our planet or the timing. And so May 12th, it's such an important date, we know. But tell us, what do you want to share with us tonight to get us started on what we can expect in the next few months or so, or in the next 12 months that's getting ready to happen to the earth?
Well, Pastor Paul, one of the more immediate issues that comes across a lot, in fact, is part of the heart of some of the activity that you see today. And I'm so thankful for this broadcast being uncensored, so we can talk a little more about that, because, as you know, I've been talking about those waves that are coming in, galactic cosmic rays, which are writing pulses coming into our solar system. They're having an impact, so much so that CERN has poured a lot of money into several experiments there. One in particular, which will get feedback on cloud formation. And to get a better idea of what I'm talking about here, the Earth right now is going through an extreme and rapid change. And believe me, that change is going to escalate. It's going to become faster and faster as the days go forward. So right now, CERN and other science-based agencies are pouring money into finding out some of the properties of Earth. In particular, climate sensitivity is one of the variables that CERN is going to solve with their cloud chamber. What they're doing is they're simulating our atmosphere and galactic cosmic rays. As the rays come in, which we know we're at a 12% increase already again, and then, of course, it goes up all the time. So we're being exposed to some very exotic and dangerous particles, but they're seeding the clouds. That's what's happening. The aerosols and the clouds are becoming much more dense than usual. These climate sensitivity, that missing variable, of which that experiment at CERN is going to allow everybody to finally begin to prepare for something.
So when you say they're seeding the clouds, is CERN involved in?
No, not CERN. These are the galactic cosmic rays that are pouring into our solar system.
Okay,
right?
Got it. Okay.
Galactic cosmic rays, aside from affecting, from the core of the Earth to other planets around it, they also are aerosolized and they get seeded into the clouds, and they cause something called cloud seeding, which is actually absolutely crucial in the formation of clouds. So with this effect, with galactic cosmic rays, what they want to know is what is the volume of galactic cosmic rays that will put our cloud structure, the seeding of clouds, into what they're looking for. Now, let me explain what they're looking for. They know for a fact that we're facing a rapid and extreme change in temperatures in the surface of the Earth. They know this. All preparations have been made for this. They're pouring a lot of money into CERN to determine exactly when this is going to happen, because they need to forecast this so they can move plans up, allocate more money, more resources, and everything else. Now, we're not talking about something in the far future. That's not what we're talking about. This is a weather forecast of massive scope. To give you an example, with our current rate of change in the climate, our temperatures going up on this Earth in certain areas has gone up 15 degrees higher than normal. What? But they know for a fact other places will drop at least 60 degrees below.
What?
So with all this pouring in, CERN is working at a breakneck pace to find out this formula, this missing variable. They have to forecast, because what they've been doing is they've been doing a lot of preparedness actions. Food storage is one of them. Materials collection and allocation is another. Because other countries are doing the same thing. They have to collect precious sustaining materials. They're taking grain movement and storage, key personnel extraction, fueling everything, right? They're reorganizing the electrical grid for backup power and restart capability. So they're doing all these preparatory actions because they know we're about to enter into a time period where there's literally no recovery. For the bulk of the people, it's going to become very strenuous. And that, again, this is not the far future. We're not talking about something in the far future. So with this missing variable, they hope to forecast, have a precise forecast. In fact, they can't afford to make a mistake on forecasting the outcome of this. They can't afford to do that.
Are they storing grains now, obviously? We're hearing all the time that there's shortages of food, there's shortages of meat, Is it because some of this is actually being stored underground and being prepared for these drastic changes?
Well, I'm going to give you a hypothetical. If they were going to prepare to live underground throughout the phenomena, throughout these rapid and extreme changes on the surface of the Earth, they would absolutely begin food storage, which means all the processing topside, or I'll say on the surface of the Earth with different companies, would fluctuate. It would most certainly fluctuate. They would have to hit a point to where they would have to take control of it just for a time, so they could ship all the processed chemicals that keep the meat good while it's going down there, and keep the grains good and dry out everything. They have a process by which they store these things, which means those who make MREs and all these other foods that last for several years, they would have total allocation to these supply chains that would feed these safe places that people would go. Also, the fuel, something would happen to the fuel. Anytime there's a fuel becomes plentiful and the prices go low, you better believe that they're fueling up things for another cause. This happens every single time. It happened before every single major war. It happens during major conflicts and suspicions of troubles that we'll have on the surface of the Earth. Grain movement and storage is another factor. They would come up with thousands of excuses as to why the crops are dying, but in the meanwhile, the government has bought up lots of lands, and they've been growing their own crops. And this has happened since, 2014, I believe, was first allocation, large allocation of some of these farms. They have their own grains and everything else. And so they would have to very silently start moving those things into safe areas, which means normal granaries, of which everybody knows about, they would have to go empty to store up these other granaries, correct? Reorganizing the electrical grid would be number one, because you can't run these bases on their power source. You don't want to exhaust that power source before anything ever happens. So then the power grid would have to be boosted. It would have to be doubled up. It would have to be very resilient towards solar activity, specifically solar activity. Because if it's foreseen the solar activity is going to survive some of the radiation influx, these extensive weather changes, you name it, they'll survive it. They would have to have all network control of these power grids into a central system. As of 2018, all major power companies moved their networking capabilities to single spots. And now no one knows where the master control system for these network controllers are for any power company anymore.
Wow. Okay, so they're preparing, and you're saying this is coming in months, or let's say a short period of time. It's sooner rather than later. This is events are going to happen on the Earth.
Short period of time.
Are we going to experience? We're already obviously radiation levels are increasing. You're talking about extreme changes in weather, temperatures, and control. Do you see a change in snow, rain, hail, winds?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, wasn't it China that just got buried in snow? Yeah. And then wasn't it in several other places, there are phenomena that are taking place that are just over the top. For example, in April, this month in April, China had its snow. Of course, people were trapped in their cars, in their homes, and this and the other. I know why while COVID-19 has been taking place, no other news has been covered. In other regions of the earth, they've been having ice problems, massive ice problems. Australia, for example, is about to enter into a cold period that they may severely regret. This will be followed by a fire season I don't believe that any of us have ever seen before. And you do know we're entering into a grand solar minimum.
Yes, I do know that.
Okay. So with a grand solar minimum, more radiation will be able to penetrate our system here, the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, so on and so forth. It's going to penetrate, not to mention our magnetosphere is in motion right now, which means it's moving. Those lines of force are moving. They're going to end up somewhere over the province of the, somewhere in the Middle East here shortly, I give that about 5 months, which means that the magnetic north is going to change severely within a very short time.
In 5 months? About 5 months it's going to take for it to swing up?
Yeah, about 5 months. 5 months is going to move significantly. And the reason why, again, is because we have this overcharging of the Earth taking place. There's something that has to also be explained in this whole cumulative issue that we're facing here. And this is, by the way, an immediate issue because it brings up several different factors I don't believe that we're used to. I know that problems from space will come, but I can tell you this right now, we're going to experience issues from the Earth that are going to be devastating. And that will be exacerbated by issues from space, and all that will be compacted in a very short duration of time. So CERN, number one, they're doing what they're doing. All the scientific agencies are pouring in their greatest minds to solve this. They have to do it quickly for the entire world. And they're also trying to find out something about the oceans within the Earth. They are also pouring money into this to research it, to find out, what in the world is happening with this. Because right now, let me give you this, right now, the volume of all the oceans of the Earth, if you can imagine that, there is water inside of the Earth 4 times the mass of all the oceans on the Earth. It's 4 times the mass. It's just waiting, it's sitting there. And yeah, this is going to be another issue.
Well, that's what, and I think that's what the Bible called the fountains of the earth opened up in the days of Noah. Okay, during the flood, the fountains of the earth. So it come out of. You're saying there's 4 times more water in the earth than there is on the top of the earth.
Yes. Yeah,
wow.
In fact, it's so extreme, Pastor Paul, that now they believe that water was not. They had a theory. I don't believe in evolution, but as far as science goes, they have a theory that Earth was seeded by water from external comets and asteroids, things of that nature. They no longer believe that. They believe now that water has been locked inside the Earth for a long time, and on occasion, some of that water is released. So they've had several experiments to narrow this down. Some of those experiments, some of the kookier experiments have hit with the public. I believe that most people would recognize what's called ringwoodite. That's a blue crystal found about 435 miles down within the earth, and it has water inside of it. It holds water. That's one of the kooky civilian experiments that they had. Now, the other experiments are somewhat precise, and that's why I'm giving the number. It's about 4 times the water volume that's on the surface of the earth is in the earth. It's about 700 kilometers down, and it is massive. One of the NOAA did verification experiments. I believe they made a mistake when they did this, but they were verifying some civilian results, and what they did was they sent sound waves through the earth. Well, of course, if sound waves hit water, or based upon how they travel through rock, they can tell what type rock is in the earth, right? But if it hits water, they slow down significantly. And what they found was around the entirety of the Earth, the majority of which is sitting right underneath the US of A, they found that the sound waves slow down significantly at the same density, right? And that sound will have the same rate of speed it would have as though it were going through the ocean. And they found that to be true underneath the United States. They found this in Russia. Russian scientists have also verified in that region, Middle Eastern people likewise. So that water that's being held within the Earth has been verified already. What they need to know is that because of volcanism, right, this water can be released because of volcanism. I know that sounds backwards, but it can be released. But it won't be released in the way of a flood this time. It will cover some of the land masses, but the problem is going to be that water, that fresh water, it's not salt water, it's fresh water, will go up into the atmosphere, and it will cause a cloud issue we've never had before. And this will probably make a weather phenomena 10 times more or greater than what it is right now. That's where we're going to experience massive atmospheric compression, which means our wind speeds are going to be driven up beyond the scales.
Are you serious? And that's why and Mike, I guess with the radiation and the particles coming down and pressing from the cosmic rays and all the charged particles pushing that atmospheric down, we're going to have these extreme straight line winds you're talking about, and this is going to create massive hail and electrifying lightning strikes and bolts. All these things are going to be, and while the magnetosphere is changing. So this sounds to me like, Mike, there's a lot of moving parts. And what should people expect? And that's not even the debris field you want to talk about. But let's stay with the ocean. Yeah, to stay with the ocean for a minute. I mean, you're talking volcanism. You're saying there's going to be a lot of pressure building from the internally, from the core of the Earth. I guess the core of the Earth heating up is going to put so much pressure and steam on that water. It's going to push against the lava. How's this work?
It'll begin to dislodge right at the right below the asthenosphere, right above the mantle. It'll begin to dislodge as the Earth energizes. It's going to start, that liquid is going to be under high heat. High heat means more pressure, which means the greater ability to melt rock going up. Well, when it starts to melt, this rock holding water, these crystals holding water, and some of the water caverns they have found, when that superheated water touches superheated magma, it's going to force it right up through the crust of the Earth. But it's going to happen by way of steam, by way of a gas release. This will take place in the oceans a lot, because the oceans, of course, are closer to the asthenosphere than any place else. So it's going to take place in the oceans. People will actually begin to see steam events, I'm going to call them steam events, happening all throughout the oceans. This will be one of the first woes that people will have an idea that, we're in bad shape. Because once that steam begins, then the rate at which the water is going to be released will begin to double. By steam at first, it'll begin to double. In fact, Pastor Paul, just to give you an idea, there were, as you were doing some of your findings about fish being found, thousands of fish washing up ashore. You did one specific article where one of the people said it appeared like the fish were cooked, fully cooked.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they went back and researched. They put a hush-hush on that situation. Those fish were cooked. Those fish did not smell. They were cooked by superheated water underneath the ocean floor. And it was, in fact, a portion of this steam coming up from these reservoirs, these deep reservoirs of water that are superheated, and they cook the fish instantly. And when it came topside, that's when we had the ocean temperature changes. Storms formed out of a small release of this steam. We had a formation of storms that formed shortly thereafter. And if anybody would go back and check that, they would see those course of events, just like clockwork. So now imagine this, not in one area, like it did when it cooked. Those fish were, 3.5 feet thick in the water? They were 3.5 feet thick. So imagine an area about 500 square miles having steam released into it, and all life in that area would be cooked. But that would have an atmospheric effect that we just couldn't. Our weather would change in 72 hours. It would go from weather like we're having now to weather that no one could go outside, or no one could exist standing outside. So this is building. It's not going backward to the ocean right now, or below the ocean. We're having more and more what's happening right now is that superheated water is released into the ocean. It is dissipated because of the sheer volume of the ocean water. But they're having more and more of these vents open up. So more and more steam vents are opening up. Superheated water is entering into the ocean water, changing salinity and everything else. So biologists are involved. You have everybody involved in tracking this phenomenon. And they're at breakneck pace and with a lot of money. They're trying to get prepared to see exactly. They need a precise forecast to take shelter from everything that's coming.
So we look at, well, obviously when you're saying that steam from the core, from the earth, so hot it's being heated because the core of the earth's being heated, and it's being heated because the magnetic shield is being inundated with radiation. It's going into the poles. All right, and all of a sudden this steam is just going to start shooting up, and fish are going to be dying. And like I said, I did talk about it. There was some fish that floated up, thousands of fish floated up like they were cooked in the ocean. Is it because, how intense will this get, Mike? I mean, Planet X, is it just going to go racing by on the outside of our solar system, or does it come close enough that it just literally half bakes the Earth? I mean,
well, I think right now, even with the radiation, the source of this radiation is unusual. I'll say that. It's unusual. So there is a source to all this radiation coming in. This is only going to increase. It's not going to dissipate. It's not going to slow down. It's going to increase. And as it increases, our planet's going to continue to change. And that rate of change is exponential. So you'll notice that this year with our weather phenomena. In fact, right now, this very moment, if people would track the weather phenomena all over the earth, you're going to see a drastic change in patterns. Some of the steam that I'm talking about that will come out of the ocean, that means a person in Myrtle Beach will look out at the water and they'll see a fog coming off the ocean waters all the time. And they'll wonder, what is that? There'll be no-go zones in the ocean where people can't go like they are now. There's several no-go zones in the ocean where submarines can't even go because it will damage military equipment. They can't sustain equipment in temperatures of, that hot. So with all this said, you're looking at an event that has already begun. It's going to continue to build. Unfortunately, when everything is recognized, at that point, there's really nothing anybody can do. In fact, there's nothing anybody can do about it now. The only thing they're going to be able to do is protect themselves from some of the events or the climate itself, or some of the massive heat, massive cold, the water. They can protect themselves from it. This is why they need a precise forecast, and they need that within a month. Within 1 month, they need a precise variable that will complete this formula, so they can go ahead. They have 1 more month to get this variable solved. 1 month, baseball. 1 month. So they're not playing around.
So
and after they get this variable, they're going to make their little power moves here and there. I'm sure that people will see that, but I would correlate that to some of the massive events that are happening on the planet, because this planet will see rapid and extreme changes. That's almost no warning time, because if you can't tell the warning signs right now, chances are when you do see them, it's going to be too late. So it's one of those situations that you want to inform folks about, but it's not a subject that anybody would take joy talking about, period, because it's going to be devastating.
And so folks, don't expect the news to do a breaking news. You got 1 month. Here's what's getting ready to happen. Here's what we need you to do. That's not going to happen in our mainstream media. But you're saying, Mike, you're telling me right now in this conference, we got 1 month to really prepare ourselves for some drastic climate changes around the globe. Some places are going to get hit with hotter heat than normal, and others with colder waves than normal. And when will we start seeing this steam really, really starting to get crazy? And do you expect to be some really wild jet stream changes in this 30 days? What are we gonna see meteorites or the red dust, the rain coming? What do we expect to see in 30 days?
Well, I'm sure you'll see some of the meteorites. As far as the jet stream changing its position, the steam in the oceans, people will begin to notice that almost immediately. So these events I'm talking about, they are forming pretty fast. People will recognize, anybody who listens to any of this, and they have a pretty good focused mind on audience are going to be able to see it. They will be able to see a bunch of things that will corroborate the information spoken of here. Now, the other folks, they're going to see it, misinterpret what they're saying, or come up with some explanation and just, explain it away. Too bad for them. But anybody who's listening to this, anybody who can actually not only listen to this, but go behind me and go and do your own research and start looking into things, they're going to see the exact same things, and are all going to point to one direction. It is incredibly massive. One topic is not going to cover everything that's happening. And keep in mind, Pastor Paul, we didn't cover space yet. We're just talking about the water problem in the earth, the water problem indeed. Now that also means this: will there be drinkable water for folks to have? No, there won't be, because as this superheated water is released, and because it is steam, it's going to raise the humidity in certain parts of the earth to a point where the cloud structures and the galactic cosmic rays will cause a drier phenomena. This will begin to impact the jet stream, which will change directions once again. If the jet stream changes directions, the East Coast is going to dry up within days. That'll be about 15 days. It'll be dried up. It won't rain or do any of those things there because of weather. We're just, it'll be like the Dust Bowl again, just like the Dust Bowl. In the West Coast, all of its weather phenomena will absolutely change. We're already at a critical point right now. We can't really afford for the climate to change even more. And I know people are happy because hardly anybody's been driving, and they say the air is cleared up. That's not going to help us either, because most of the warming that we have been feeling on this planet is not caused by CO2. It's caused by the sun. And now that we're going through a grand minimum, if this be that time, we're going to have a type of cooling effect. But we have an issue with that. And I know that many people are looking for an ice age. And I know they talk about an ice age. And I know an ice age occurs every 18 to 20,000 years. I know it's cyclical. I know that it's in the record. But we have a problem this time. Never in recorded history has the Earth absorbed what it's absorbing. It's absorbed so much that you have two distinct radiation types you have to deal with here: long wave radiation and short wave radiation. Short wave radiation is powerful. It comes off the sun. It's full of light and all that good stuff. Short wave or long wave radiation would be the other type, and that's what's emitted from the Earth, and it's normally in the infrared spectrum. So that can be translated into heat. But we have a problem this time. The long wave radiation that the Earth is emitting is about 700 times higher than what they've ever seen it before.
What?
So if there was a cloud coverage, too bad for a mini ice age, we would begin to fry from the inside out. Something is happening. It's just incredible inside the planet. The potential of power inside this planet is absolutely mind-blowing. And so the dynamics that normally the Earth goes through cyclically is altering. And it's not too many people understand the dynamic between what the Earth is releasing that would just totally kill an ice age. Does that mean we're not going to see freezing temperatures? No, that's not what that means. It just means that the heat will be so sporadic with the cold temperatures that you're going to have a dryness none of us have endured before. Can you imagine living in a world with about 20% humidity, and that's the max humidity all over the Earth? That would be life-threatening to a high degree.
Yeah, that means the humidity levels will be so low, things would be so dry, it would affect plant life, it will affect human life, it will affect everything. It almost turned everything almost into desert-like, okay? Mike, when you start talking about the Earth and you talk about the heat and the melting effect and the radiation levels that we're receiving, in the Bible in 2 Peter 3, it talks about the Earth melting with a fervent heat. Even the elements are going to burn up. I mean, Peter gave us a look into this prophetically for the last days. So are we starting to see the effects of the prophecies of the last days in these climate adjustments that we're going through here?
You know what I think we have? I think one of the problems what made it so difficult to see was a lack of collection of data or a lack of a serious look into some of the changing phenomena. We don't normally, people don't normally look into something until it kills somebody, right? Until it causes real damage. And with the damage of the crops, with all the crops that were damaged, and with all the animal die-offs, and all these different things that are happening, the temperature changes in the jungle causing the species to just totally fall off, and new species are coming back. When that began to happen, that caught people's attention, and then they began to look deeper. Well, that's where the trending came in. And since the 1700s, I believe it was, they began to track certain temperature-related phenomena since back during that time. And I believe that they have finally realized up to this point, because they can't do what they used to do anymore. 1750 was the introduction of the Industrial Revolution. Our climate has really changed since then, but the carbon rate has been consistent, believe it or not. It's not fluctuated that much. So it wasn't that. But when they looked into other elements, they said, we have a problem. One of those elements is the sun. The sun's brilliance is 7 times brighter than what it was, it's 15 times brighter than what it was in the 1970s. Since, 1992, when they did that luminous test, it's 7 times brighter than it was in 1992. So we certainly have physical changes to most of the planetary bodies out there, including our sun. And now, with the introduction of technology, with the advancements of technology, and older technology not being able to work anymore because the environment has changed the way electrons interact with one another. So mathematics inside that govern electronics, they're also beginning to alter. So we're having a breakdown in certain physics. So this brings people's attention to what's causing this. And so now they're starting to take notice that we are in trouble. And when they look at the trending and they see it going up and it's not dropping off, it's not turning back to normal or any of those things, not to mention there are problems on the other planets, it's really starting to capture people's attention. Unfortunately, people have to actually die before we take something seriously.
When do you expect volcanism to change? I mean, right now there's 45 volcanoes. It's the most ever to be erupting at any one time. That's happening right now as we're recording this. Are you expecting major changes with volcanism?
I'm expecting continued changes in volcanism. Some of the now remember, as these CGRs hit the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is also weakening. So many of those CGRs are beginning to penetrate the Earth. Those are galactic cosmic rays. They're starting to penetrate everything. Our clouds act as a filter, but the Earth must absorb most of that, and we will too. As this continues to feed into the Earth is going to overcharge. It's already overcharged. So much of this radiation is going to translate into heat, into molten rock, into higher pressures and everything else inside the planet. With that buildup, you're going to see an uptick. You're going to see sporadic upticks, almost like somebody is pecking a key on a keyboard, and it will happen at intervals. Each one of those intervals, we're going to have both earthquake phenomena and volcanic phenomena. But each time, it'll become a little more in intensity than the other. But have you also noticed that some of these volcanoes that have been going off, they're not shutting off, they're still active. It's almost like something is feeding some of these things. So in the atmosphere, they've already had to alter air traffic to compensate for ash. They say they're going to do this for the foreseeable future. So we've had a lot of changes in air traffic simply because of volcanoes. And then you have ancient volcanoes that are waking up, and then you have volcanoes that were never volcanoes, but magma found its place there, and they're beginning to go off. So, and we know in the U.S. we have Yellowstone. It too is not going to be immune from some of the magma activity underneath the crust of the Earth. It's not immune. It's going to get a kickstart. Is what it's going to get. And this will be on. We're going to have to deal with these things back to back. You know what it reminds me? No wonder the Lord said, only a fool would ask for the day of the Lord, because no good is in the day of the Lord. And because of the activity around the world, there's no safe place to go. But these events are building. Hopefully people are paying attention so they can be mentally prepared. And being mentally prepared prepared, even that's going to be a challenge in the coming days. It will.
You seem to be very concerned, Mike. You've been mentioning by mid-May, May 12th, maybe in the next 30 days, we're going to be seeing some major changes on the planet. What can we expect by mid-May, late May?
Oh, Pastor Paul. First of all, in space, we have several issues in space. Most of the optics and most of the outlets on the internet, they only represent probably a max of 5% of what's actually out there. So we're not seeing half of it. You already know about the satellite issue around the globe, correct?
Well, what do you mean by the issue? I'm not sure.
The satellite issue is that we have so much junk around this planet.
Oh, yes.
I have a real-time, I'm going to have to get that to you, real-time graphic. It's real-time. When I say real-time, I mean real-time. From the monitored source, a real-time graphic of those objects around space. If you were on the outside of these objects, you couldn't even see Earth. That's how dense it is around the Earth.
Wow! That's a lot of space junk plus a lot of satellites.
You're right, and Earth is just, it's almost like Earth has a big plastic ball around it. You really can't see Earth from all the junk that's up there. That would be okay, except we have another issue. These objects go out, they go out a pretty good distance. A lot of this junk goes out almost 3/4 of the way to the moon, and they're orbiting Earth. We have inbound objects coming inbound. We have clusters of junk. We have a lot of fragments coming our way. We're not going to escape those fragments. We have a different portion of the universe that we're entering into, which are full of exotic gases trapped in ice. They're going to be released when we begin to enter into these places. Some of those places are high in arsenic and we don't know what else, but we're entering into it. We don't even know, a lot of scientists, they have no idea what the properties are concerning some of this exotic material. For example, some of this material, if it heats above 70 degrees, it almost disappears. But if you cool this stuff down below, I believe it's below 28 degrees, it becomes 3 times heavier than what it was. And so they have very odd properties, right? We're entering into this junk, and we're going to be inundated, the Earth will be inundated atmospherically with this stuff. That would be fine if we did not have the junk around our planet. Right. Because there's a percentage of the junk around our planet that is full of iridium. Iridium can kill, and it will kill. And if we're absolutely going through a very junky part of space, and when we hit this, every single object up there could likely be affected. Pastor Paul, I can, if I can, speak about one specific scripture that bothers me.
Okay, go right ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
It's when the horses are smited with blindness and the rider with madness.
Yeah.
Okay, that bothers me, and it always has. Here's why. Our military vehicles, our civilian vehicles, we use something called GPS. Most people have become dependent upon GPS. Now, of course, we're not going to ride into battle in horses, right? No. But we do rely upon GPS systems, even localized GPS systems. If those satellites are gone, if those satellites are compromised, so will the GPS systems be compromised. And if our atmosphere is inundated with galactic cosmic rays to the point where aircraft are too irradiated above a certain altitude, we don't even have localized GPS systems. In that case, there's no direction, no directions, and the maps and everything else will not work in these military vehicles. So then the vehicles or the horse will be blind. So that scripture reminds me, if the GPS is gone, isn't the vehicle blind? The vehicle's blind. We have autonomy built into some of these systems, right? Certainly in our aircraft, in the Air Force and Navy and everything else, we have autonomy built in. They rely upon GPS. They cannot carry out their functions without GPS. And then it says the riders with madness. We all know that the cosmonauts in Russia were sent up into space, and they came down as raving lunatics, because when you go outside of the Earth's magnetosphere, your brain, your neurological connections in the brain are severely compromised. They begin to break, so it drives you into a madman, like an animal. You have no cognitive ability. abilities. You have no reasoning abilities. And these guys were trying to kill each other. And they had really reverted back into an animalistic type behavior. Well, we know if our magnetosphere is compromised, it's going to affect everybody's brain who's exposed or who is left out there without a shielding. So not only will the loss of the magnetosphere affect weather phenomena on the Earth, the surface of the planet, and our communications, but it's also going to affect our brains in a big way. And we're going to have a test of this in 2 months. In 2 months, there should be, by calculations, there should be some dips or some holes in our magnetosphere. Those lines of force are going to be redirected. During this time, anybody in those vicinities, you're gonna learn of people going out murdering people. In the same day, we're gonna have a very high crime rate, and that should prove the point that without the magnetosphere, we cannot function as like we're doing now, because it's going to be very difficult for anybody to actually to remember. Like the memory we have now. Just to explain. The memory we have now is bound to the brain, right? In other words, there are two sides of us. There's a spiritual side, there's a biological side. The biological side of us, people get Alzheimer's and things like that. They can't remember their loved ones, right? Because it's bound to their bodies. So if your body is affected, the magnetosphere is not there. Your neurological connections break. You have no memory. So that means you'll look to your right or to your left, and anybody you see, you're not going to know. And because you're back in some sort of animalistic behavior, you may turn and attack them. You may be so frightened you may attack them, and vice versa, right? Yeah. So, that's also something that I know for a fact that the Russians worry about this, because they had all the data concerning those pilots who went out without that shielding. And the USA, they wanted to test that program. They did it with 2 chimps, and the 2 chimps were dead upon arrival. But and most of the animals die as soon as you do that with except mice won't do it. Mice won't do it. But the chimps, hominids, they do that. They seem to go back to a very animalistic behavior.
So it's a primitive behavior whenever, and so what you're saying is if a person, let's say with Alzheimer's, let's say, or when cognitive connections start to break down, people then get afraid, they get fearful. There's a mechanism in the brain that says you have to fight or you have to defend yourself. You don't know who this person is because they can't remember who they are, and this thing happens. You're saying in the next 2 months, we're going to see some actual insanity, some violence, some things happen that will be way outside the norm in a larger numbers of people. You see that happening?
Yeah, we're going to see that. And in fact, we're going to see that in a couple of areas where the magnetic lines of force will all but be gone. When they're gone from these areas, of course, this event's only going to last an hour or so. That's all it takes. Within that hour, you're going to see the crime rate go up somewhere on the Earth. Through the modeling, the lines of force are going to be drawn. It's very difficult to model magnetic lines of force. You can always tell when they're going to break, but it's hard to tell where they're going to break. And so when they do snap, when they do break, which they will, because of you're dealing with a lot of variables, tension and so on and so forth. When they do break in 2 specific areas on the face of this Earth, the crime rate is going to shoot through the roof. And because it will only be gone an hour, it's going to leave people in a type of fuzz, because when it comes back, because they won't have long-term exposure, when it comes back, I can almost guarantee you there are going to be some troubling after stories. People are not going to know. They're going to say statements like, I don't know why this person acted the way they did. They act like they didn't even know me. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah. So are they going to so are people going to go temporarily insane and do things they don't normally do, and then and then they'll come back to who they are? I mean, that's almost like MK Ultra kind of stuff. I mean, you think that the Russians might have, and the Americans as well, used some of this cosmic, the cosmonauts when they went insane? Do you think they've used some of that information? Is 5G got anything to do with any of this? Can they use that to temporarily bring insanity as well?
Well, 5G is think of 5G as a microwave that's pointed out for triangulation. In a pretty big one with a consolidated beam. So 5G actually being a communications line could they do that? Could they break the magnetic lines of force over a specific area? Yes, if they pointed enough antennae at a certain location, if they triangulate it into a certain location, they could absolutely do that by way of heat. If you change change the temperature above the surface of the Earth in any given area. You can also change the electromagnetic force in that area, which will then bounce some of that magnetic field over into a different direction. They can also do the same thing with CERN. CERN has directional, powerful magnets, the most powerful magnets on the face of the Earth. And I believe that...
CERN?
Yeah, CERN does. When CERN is operational, it affects the magnetosphere. It does it every single time, which is why they have timed events, there to watch everything, to watch the environments and everything else. And so, but those are the most powerful magnets on the face of the Earth, because they have to control particles and the direction of those particles. Should those magnets fail, that's a nuclear bomb that's going off at CERN.
Mike, also I know that CERN has been and I do know, you're right, that during solar minimums compared to solar maximums, or when our magnetosphere is weakened, we have to be careful what times we can run CERN at full maximum capacity. And there's a lot of change. They're using all this information to try to, I guess, to prepare us for the time that's coming up on the Earth from what? This binary system, these waves of energy that you're talking about, these radiation levels, cosmic waves. I mean, all of this, help us.
Pastor, they're going to take care of themselves, okay, is what they're going to do. One of the major plans is to get key personnel, again, right, to collect all key personnel. And with key personnel extraction, with the current policy in place, with the current procedure in place, that means they take a high percentage of force authority with them, which means your police, your, individuals like that, law enforcement. But they basically leave everybody else topside to fend for themselves, and they allow systems to break down because there'll be no good to anybody.
Are the elitists going? I know the COVID thing's going on, but I'm hearing reports that some of the elitists are already going underground. They're in luxury bunkers or going underground cities. The excuse we're getting for why some people have already gone is COVID. But is it really the incoming debris field, the incoming radio waves or radiation waves the next month to 2 months that you're talking about?
I believe it's a few issues, and one of the big issues is how things in space will affect the surface of the Earth. Because to be totally blunt, you could see they're preparing for the Earth's surface to die.
Is it going to die in 2 months, Mike? Or
no, it's not going to die in 2 months, but we'll certainly, even right now, if you begin to track data from this day, just from this day, about how the Earth is doing in general, you're going to see, and you track that data, you keep it every day, just do it for 1 month, you're going to see a very drastic difference between when you started and at the end of that 30-day period. That's how noticeable things are right now. Different stories come out, like you'll hear stories like crop failure, you'll hear stories like threat of meat factories shutting down. We're not going to have any meat. You remember when they advertised that vegetable sandwich? Whatever it was. And then everybody started getting on this trend. Hey, we need to put the meat and sausage, biscuits, and everything. I know, because I bought one by accident. So I know that full well. I'll never do that again. But anyway, you started hearing this well before the COVID-19 issue. Yeah. All of a sudden, with the COVID-19 issue, you have several topics that popped up that coincide with topics that were already out there prior to COVID-19. It's almost like they're utilizing everything they can utilize to scoop these programs forward. Now you're hearing about a meat shortage. You're having all these individuals come to the forefront saying, well, you can get protein out of this meal and that meal and that meal. You don't need meat. But we knew something was wrong when they began to pour money into Burger King and some of these other places. And let me tell you what really set that off, just to give you an idea how they work. There was a company that's affiliated with no one that made several commercials. They were not affiliated with Hardee's. They were not affiliated with Burger King or anybody else. In fact, nobody can find out who they're affiliated with. And they made a commercial about Burger King and about Hardee's, right? About eating these alternative burgers and alternative sausage biscuits and alternative foods and all this, that, and the other. And there's no accountability because nobody knows who these guys are. Well, first of all, you don't spend your own money to boost up another company that you know nothing about.
No.
So obviously, this agenda was being pushed way before COVID-19. And during that same time, you were also hearing about money exchanges and policies with farmers and the crops. So all of this, all of that's not coincidental that it came up at the same time. Then all of a sudden, with the introduction of COVID-19 and social distancing, and a change in how we live our lives, now all of a sudden we're going to have a lack of meat. We're going to have a lack of dairy. We're going to have a lack of wheat. All these things we're going to have a lack of. And so all of a sudden these things are coming out. It's almost like COVID-19 gave them a good excuse to push some agendas that they couldn't otherwise get everybody to go along with. And so now with COVID-19, they can seal the deal with a lot of agendas. So, yeah, I would say many of these things began well before COVID-19, but you're just seeing them, go a little further with COVID-19.
Mike, also, as we're looking at now the incoming debris field, a lot of people want to know on this Mega Quake Conference, are you expecting deep impacts? Do you expect? I mean, you talked about. I asked you last week, or when we did an interview. I said, if there was three things in the next 12 months, which would you be more concerned about? COVID-19, nuclear war, or I forgot what the third one was, and or a major earthquake. And you said fire from the heavens. Can you explain?
The fall of fire, yep, I'm still worried about that. That May 12th date, surrounding the May 12th date, prior to that May 12th date, is there's some folks collecting data on everything they can in space. I mean, everything they can. In fact, this has not happened like this before, but they're collecting data on everything. And the reason why is because there have been some recent observations in space of what happens when clusters actually impact a large body. And they saw, here's what they observed. There was a cluster that impacted a large body, but there was another body in the same vicinity. They were still in an orbit, but the body that was impacted began to affect this body that the other body, like another planet. It began to affect it in such a way that it just, you could say that it just literally almost destroyed that world in a very cruel way. So they took that information and they began to do deeper studies on that. What they found was, suppose Mars is hit by something, not the Earth, but Mars is really hit by something. Do you not know that we will feel the effects of whatever hits Mars? We're going to feel those effects and feel them badly. They will start to, those effects will begin to poison the Earth. So you can't destroy one planet and leave another untouched, is what I'm saying. And this is something shocking, because I can see more celestial dynamics in operation when they view this. But not only did they view this one time, but they caught the tail end of another event and the same results. Now, what makes them nervous is because right now they look at a small percentage of the sky. So wherever you look in the sky, I'm telling you right now, there's potential issue. But they have locked into a point in the heavens of some very dense clusters headed straight to us. They're not going away from us. It's not some close approach. No, we're going to pass right through a cluster, a debris field that's so massive that likely 3/4 of our solar system will be affected by this. Okay, so
this is a massive. You're talking about a massive cloud of debris field that we are going to have a direct impact. It's going to hit us. Now, the little green file, and Heidi's going to, of course, and you folks who are watching this Mega Quake Conference, you watch her presentation. She's worked on it feverishly, and it's got several dates for certain things, including a cluster cloud collision with Jupiter. But it goes beyond Jupiter, because apparently the cloud and the cluster is bigger than Jupiter. Am I right by saying that, Mike?
Yeah, so you're right on it.
And that once it hits Jupiter, it keeps on coming. And I mean, even before that, there's going to be something that maybe hits the moon. Mike, are we going to have a cluster of incoming debris hitting the moon soon?
Well, it's funny you say that, because we didn't talk about this, and I put out any information on May 12th, but May 12th is one of those dates where observation. We could actually, this time, we could actually observe an impact that you could see with the naked eye. We could actually observe some impacts, either here on Earth, not huge ones, but a cluster of smaller ones that can do damage, either hit us or hit our moon because we're in proximity to it. And that's what they've been tracking. Now, the way this thing is traveling, and this is how you know it didn't come from here, because this thing is traveling in some sort of a corkscrew type of motion. It's very odd, very weird. Anyway, they picked up on this, and it was impossible to see where it was going because each snapshot showed it going in a different direction. And it wasn't until 2020, or 2019, until they put the whole thing together. They've been watching it since then, and it has not changed trajectories. In other words, nothing has influenced this mass headed in our direction as of yet. So around May 12th, that could very well be a time where we're going to experience something. To what magnitude, I'm not sure, but we could absolutely experience something. Now, here's the bad part. If that trajectory brings that small cluster in proximity with the Earth and our moon system, right, then that means, I believe it is a month and a half later, right, some of the bigger boys are behind it, because this one evidently is from a larger body. It's a piece short off from a larger body, but these other pieces have the exact same rate of motion, and they're headed in the exact same position. So if the smaller ones hit us on May 12th, the bigger ones will most certainly come right in our proximity. And because of their motion, chances are, because they're not moving like any other asteroid or anything like that, these things have a corkscrew motion. Some oblong movement. It's very strange. But it's troubling. It's keeping some folks up at night because it's very difficult to narrow down these things, and they're moving so incredibly fast, Pastor Paul, that they're not the sun won't capture these. The speed is too high. Our sun is not going to make a big difference in their trajectory. And we likely will not see this cluster again. But they have identified this as part of a larger cluster that even sits behind that. Yeah. We're going to most certainly entertain. So it's one of those, it's one of those we possibly, and I'm saying possibly because around from the 12th to the 16th, there are a lot of people that are going to be looking for evidence of impacts or impacts from the 12th to the 16th. And if we don't have any, and believe me, they're going to comb everything to find it. But if we don't have any, that does not mean we're going to be okay for the end of I believe it's June or July. We're not going to be safe then, because right after that, you have some larger objects that they will no doubt pick up and begin to track. Unfortunately, NASA's public tracking system and JPL NASA Air Force Space Command's private tracking system are two different things. So a lot of the spokespersons for NASA, you're not going to hear, things will impact this Earth before they ever say a word. Right? That's what you're going to hear.
Just yesterday, we had an asteroid that missed us by 0.1 lunar distance. Okay, so that's like 20,000 miles. I mean, right around, it's just about the same as the satellite belt. We didn't know about it. They told us about it today. It was a small one. It was only 5 meters, but, we're not going to know. Some of this stuff that you're saying is we're not going to know. You're saying there's the space weather NASA chart that we get to know, and then there's the other chart that we don't get to see. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Correct. You're not going to, because if they were to tell of any event, even if it were to, even if the odds was not going to impact us, but it was coming in close proximity, it would just simply scare people. But we're entering into a time. It's not going to matter what they say, because I'm telling you now, we're entering into a time people are going to wake up. They're going to wake up and see if they can still see something. I'll put it this way. Here's what you're going to see. You want to know what you're going to see in a very short time coming up. You'll see people go outside at a specific time of day, nervous, looking up into the heavens, seeing and hoping and praying that something has changed its trajectory. They're going to be seeing things from the surface of the Earth without a telescope. I mean, multiple things that are inbound our way, but they'll be able to see it with the naked eye. The entire dynamic of how we trace things or track things in space is going to change. Things will become so obvious, so painfully obvious, that during this time, a lot of nervousness will grip just about everybody. People will fall dead from heart attacks from learning about this, because they're not only will they have read about it, they'll see it. And every time they see it, it's going to increase their anxiety levels beyond belief.
It's what the Bible says.
That's what the Bible says, is what Paul says. And brothers and sisters, I hope you enjoyed this. This is the major part of it. The rest of it starts to get into, salvation and all that. But this was a video just to give you what was the Mega Quake Mike from Around the World video. So I hope you got enough information. It's right here. We're close. God bless you. I'll even give you the sound on the shofar at the end here. Here we go.